Hey, welcome back, adventurers, to A Quest through Quinn, our finale episode on Dragons of Spring Dawning, our part three, hopefully our finale. We got a lot of ground to cover. Introduce my fine panel next to me and, say hi to the chat, and we're going to get straight into it. I got my boy Trev, Tony with his Knight of the Black Rose, super prevalent to the series, and then we got Jesse, Goodday, R.I.P. Flint Fireforge, man. That's tough. That's tough. I'm gonna shout out our main dude that has watched the series since we started. I've learned his name. It's Brendan Guy. I want to thank you. Normally, I would have read his comment that he leaves us in this week. He did ask if size and scope was a thing, and I love reading, but it was so long that I'm not going to read it right now, but I do appreciate the comment. I did read it in its full. I love the comments, especially the commentary feedback stuff. I love that stuff. All right, let me say hi to everybody that's here. Of course, we got Tony up first in the metaverse. No, we got Carmen. Hey, Carmen. And then we got Jesse saying $90. What you talking about, Jesse?
I came in when Tony was talking, so before you let me into the room, I heard him talking about $90 or something.
About the belt. Okay.
Yeah, the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we are reading Dragons of Spring Dawning. Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. We are currently about to tackle book three, the very end of this book. So book three, chapter one, An Old Man and a Golden Dragon. We are introduced to Pyrite, one of the oldest dragons on Krynn, having no teeth and is deaf, but his mind is still strong. Extremely skilled magic user. Pyrite and Fizband are asleep, but casually waiting for something. Dragons pass. Fizband wakes Pyrite. Four dragons with riders passing. There is a short comedic scene between Fizband and Pyrite mounting. Tanis and company are disguised as dragon officers and prisoners, flying past lands trying to remain hidden, but Fizband appears behind them, casting Fireball. Tanis having to split the group to avoid Fizband. They all notice that this is Fizband, but can't get his attention due to his battle focus. Tanis orders his dragons to attack Fizband. I think his dragon's name is Scar, maybe. His dragon refuses and lands instead. All the good dragons are all landing right into the dragon army. As they land, the Draconians do notice and start to mass upon them. Um, Scared, Barum takes off. Tass takes off to catch Barum. Tanis decides to bluff his way past the army. Before he can do so, Fizban shoos away the bronze dragons, to which they do, and Fizban, believing he has prisoners, realizes who the group is and his mistake. Fizban promotes himself as leader of the group, magically shrinks down Pyrite to a small statue, which he gives to Tass, and they flee into the hills, and this is where this chapter leaves off. I'm going to say hi to Sheena real quick. What's up, Sheena? I do have a question for this one. And this one you kind of have to think about because it gets meta with this. So in this chapter, they want the reader to believe that Fizban made a mistake. But as you read, it seems more by design. But after he meets the group, he is very much surprised. Thoughts on what really went down? Was this intentional? Because we do know that if he wouldn't have stopped them here, if they would have continued on their path, they probably would have died. But as we go forward, there's a lot of different signs that this wasn't by design. Like Fizban is kind of surprised by this and that. It's like three moments. What say ye?
I say it's his alter ego, and he's naive. He's just that old bumbling fool, but behind it all, the god paladin is directing and pulling the strings of himself. Even just so he's a part comic relief, but he's also just above all, he is pulling the strings. But it is funny because it's convincing that he's not pulling the strings, that he's just bumbling and getting through it, but he happens to be there at the right time all the time, or when they need him the most. So my money's on that.
I agree.
I want to assume it's not mentioned, but we're talking about gods, right? And we do know that there's oath with the dragons and the gods. We do know that there is some like casual play between like Paladin, Galeen, and then Takaisis, right? So I kind of chalked it up to maybe he has to like keep some of his actions hidden with them. Like he can't bestow too much interaction, or that they would outright attack him directly, and it might not be the two other gods that we talk of, because they mentioned the god of neutrality very few times throughout this book, but very important times. So I want to assume if one of the sides balanced too far, he would step in or something like that. So I kind of chalked it up to that, like Fizban like was knowing, but in doing so, he kind of had to change some of his or hide some of his actions to prevent this, fallback kind of thing. Just thoughts. I don't know.
I always looked at it as Takissis uses her power to bestow on individuals, and Paladin almost lets people do what their free will is, but he kind of just nudges them in certain directions. That's kind of how he uses his power.
Yeah.
It almost alludes to like there's rules of being a god and being present in Krynn, and Takhisis will break the rules, but she just can't physically be there right now. And Fizban or Paladin can physically be there, but maybe there are some unknown rules that rules of engagement, so to speak, that he can't break or doesn't want to break. And so by not breaking them or by bending those rules, he's implementing his alter ego into the fray.
I didn't think about that too, is that she doesn't manifest herself. She manifests in others, and he manifests in himself almost.
And you got to say about the other dragons, they did bow, when they arrived. Once they actually circled and landed, they tilted their heads in out of homage and respect. You couldn't really tell if who was it to. Was it to the dragon Pyrite or was it to Fizban? But it just acknowledged that they did bow their heads before they took off.
I got the sense it was acknowledgement to him, that you kind of get the sense going forward once, the reader has tracked down that he is Paladin, or if they have at this point, it's kind of like all of them, like when they see him, because you do get a reaction throughout all the different dragons that see him, on some level, All right, so Chapter 2, The Golden Span. Caramon catches Barum, still being chased by the Draconians. They come to a split. Fizban leads them one way, telling them the other one is an extreme dead end. The path that they take has a massive gorge to one side, eventually coming to an old bridge, deciding if they can use the bridge to overtake the Draconians. They head out, one by one, Tanis first, followed by Barum, but they only make it a short way. The planks on the bridge start to give away, causing them to head back. Draconians appear behind them, and they are forced to fight with no escape in sight. Fizban casts a spell that produces a golden span that is hovering over the gorge. One by one, they board the span and use it to make it across the bridge. Most make it across except Tanis and Caramon. Fizban and Taz. The bridge falls, taking most of the Draconians with it. The golden span hovers briefly, and they make it across. They come they camp at that spot. While camping, Barum makes a statement of understanding Caramon, which sparks questions, but Barum doesn't answer, and specifically related to siblings, that kind of thing. Say hi to Steve. What's up, Steve? Say hi to the Bud Files. What's up, Bud Files? Thank y'all for stopping by. All right, so we were camping, and it sparks the conversation between Barum and Caramon, specific related to, because he relates to Caramon because he has the brother, and that's where the question sparks. We've never mentioned the sibling kind of thing. Tanis questions Flint's health, but Flint deflects, deciding on the best route to travel. They question Taz's maps. Taz tells Tanis of a secret city named God's Home. Tanis is confused, stating God's Home is already known, but Taz tells him this is where the city originated from, it now forgotten. Fizban confirms this and mentioned that it was once believed to house the gods. And yes, hidden and forgotten, Tanis questions Fizban's words, which slightly pisses off Fizban. While they're talking, Flint has a minor heart attack and hides it from the group. They press on. I do have one question related to this. This is kind of at the point when the death clock starts, is at this moment, that heart attack that Flint, because from this point, and I can define my definition of death clock, but it's a moment in a novel where the writers get you to race for momentum, and then this is that moment. I mean, more so the dreams are coming to truth, fruition kind of thing. So chapter 2, my question is, at the beginning of the chapter they come to the split, and Fizban, he leads them, and he says, hey, the left is an extreme dead end, and he doesn't word it like that. He says it's a dead end that leads to, and then he kind of drones off. What are your thoughts on that specific dead end? Because he didn't necessarily say death. He just said kind of, if they would have gone that way, and it was the explanation of that route is away from the dragon army. My thinking was, if they would have taken that route, this would have exited them out of the novel. It would have taken them like so far off path, they wouldn't have been able to do anything towards the end or anything like that. That was my guessing. Any thoughts on the phrasing?
Well, it kind of goes back to what you were hinting at earlier, where he's letting characters decide what they want to do, but he's kind of nudging them along the way to go, no, you need to go this way.
Yeah, he does that a lot. I wouldn't even say it's like sly. It's very apparent.
Kind of like one of those things. There's so many different paths, but only one right path.
Yeah,
that led him to victory.
Mm.
Yeah, he really just says that way leads to a dead end in more ways than one. I know. I've been there. I've been here before. So it is vague, but it's, he was just adamant about going that way. I want
to assume that's what it was. It was kind of a writer's fun way of saying, like, hey, if they would have went that way, it would have been the end of the book kind of thing. They would have taken them so far off course. But I thought it was interesting the way they worded it, and it just spikes curiosity. Like, what was that way? Like, it was, because the way he worded it's not death, and he didn't say it would stop their journey. He just...
Where my mind was going during that chapter was the golden span, and how, to me, it was Fizban being a minimalist again, and just being silly. Like, why not make a whole bridge? Why not float them across the other side?
Yeah.
No, a bridge is broken, and he makes a partial bridge come down from the heavens just to fill that spot. And then it deteriorates on both sides, and it's just sitting there floating majestically. And that, to me, was just hilarious. Like,
my whole thing is him trying to convince him to get on it while it's floating, while he knows he's going to land it down to cover those like spots. Like, why didn't he just... Yeah, I thought it was funny that he was trying to convince him to get on it while it was floating, kind of thing. Like, the Draconians were coming, so...
Even in the face of that death, he's still feigning that he's just a bumbling wizard the whole time.
And ironically, I want to assume that most of, not Caramon. I don't think Caramon ever figures it out. But I want to assume by this part, there's been so many hints dropped that a bunch of them are starting to get the clue that this is not just an ordinary, like, magic user kind of thing.
Well, he's in character. He makes Heath Ledger and the Joker look like a puny actor. Just how much Fizban is in character of Fizban.
I could say that. I guess. All right, so chapter 3, God's Home. What's up, Kenneth? How you doing, Kenneth? They travel through the mountains, led by Fizban, at times seeming to be lost, but they find they're still on the right track. Tanis' thoughts go to Lorana, thinking if he could trade Beckermin for Lorana. He is torn between both answers. Tika thinks of leaving Caramon after the journey is finished, and looks at him, and the thoughts fade away almost instantly. Almost to God's Home, Beckermin disappears. Tanis freaks for a moment, but remembers Beckermin is not a woodsman, and they backtrack. Flint finds his trail and suddenly takes off after Beckermin. finding newfound strength and losing the group. The group pursued and come to a rock face with a small gorge, small enough to pass through. Tanis sends Taz ahead to make sure it is the correct path, and it is revealed to be the entrance into God's home. Taz cries for. Wait. I wrote that twice. Taz cries for Tanis and the group to hurry up, and they all crawl through. Fizban confirms it to be God's home. They all notice that the city is lonely and desolate. While taken in the city, Taz sees Flint and Baron, and it looks like they are struggling. Tanis takes off with speed born through fear, makes it to find Flint appearing to be dead. Tanis asks what Baron did, and then in the moment of rage, stabs Baron, killing him. The group pulls Tanis off Baron. At first in a rage, then in a deep sadness, Fizban tells Tanis to be strong and that he must say goodbye to an old friend. Tanis runs to Flint, who is held by Tanis. Flint tells Tanis he had almost caught Baron, and his heart collapsed. Next thing, Baron was there catching him and gently laying down Flint. Tanis learns he acted in haste. Flint says his goodbyes to the group, which Tass and Tanis are affected the most. Flint gives Tass his helm and tells Tanis he will be okay. Flint looks at Fizban and tells him he knows who he is and asks Fizban to go with him on his new journey. Fizban answers yes, and Flint has deserved some rest. Tanis says one last goodbye. Tass breaks, and Fizban picks up Flint to Tanis' surprise and questions Fizban. He states a promise Flint would not go alone. Fizban moves to a circle filled with boulders, and at such speed Tanis cannot keep up. In the circular room is a pool made out of some black stone that showcases the universe. Tanis sees the black moon. Fizban moves to the middle of the pool and disappears within the universe. The missing constellation of the valiant warrior returns and bursts with light, and that's where this chapter ends. You talk about like one of the hardest chapters to read while I was going through this.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
on top of that, to break through I mean, this was written like it just so well. They talk about in a moment having to say goodbye to an old friend, the way it was presented to the group, the situational way it happened was just excellent. You know, where Tanis believes it to be, you know, Baron has revealed his evil ways and he's killing Flint. You know, and then later come to find out it's none of that. Baron was trying to help Flint. Like, yeah, this actually got me to cry. We're talking about, you know, Stern's death and everything, and it touched me. But no, while reading this, I had to put the book down. I was like, you know, I took a moment. It was tough. Any thoughts before I break down the question?
I got a couple excerpts after anyone else wants to go.
No, I'm good.
It was almost
Right,
meant to
Steve.
be. He caught Baron, kept him from leaving, and then passed out right in the right place to be taken to his everlasting place.
Yeah, Flint's death, unlike Sturm's, was not determined early, but by the time we came to this book, we wanted to show that someone who had lived a heroic life should be honored as much as one who had died a heroic death. That was from Margaret Weis.
Yeah. You truly see it in that chapter, you know, the way it's presented, everything from start to finish. You know, just like Trev had said, he died at the perfect place for this because it just so happened to be at that spot where, you know, Fizban could take him.
It's just amazing how Tanis is so just brash, or you know, he just runs in, guns up the whole time, and doesn't even like he just sees red. It's just kind of weird how it just transitions so quick. Like he would actually believe that Baron was trying to hurt Flint. I know, but he was kind of a wild card for sure. But it is interesting though that he went as far as attempting as killing him, really, even though he's the Everman and couldn't die. But he went as far as killing him in a rage without even realizing that, you know, what was going on.
That he was the Everman. Yeah.
Situation.
Yeah, and like the way it's written. I mean, it's very believable, the situation, but not only that, but contextual, like smart reader writer standpoint, because there's not a lot of guilt that Tannis has to deal with because Baron is the Everman at this point, and he just resurrects. I mean, oops, sorry, like I didn't mean to kill you, kind of thing. Um, so there's not this like everlasting guilt that flows throughout the rest of the book like there would be if he would have murdered somebody else from the crew by accident, kind of thing. You know, um, Even though they all saw it, like how do you explain that without him resurrecting? And we think Tannis just gets super lucky that this guy's like, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah,
Now-
it'd be a hard pill to swallow if that weren't the case.
Now, do y'all think the way Tannis acted was because of his human side, or is just because Tass is an asshole?
The way they write it, it's his.
I think Tannis at this point is almost broken. He's made
Yeah.
some bad decisions, and he has guilt. He's
Okay.
like second guessing himself, and he's just broken until the end of the book, I think.
So it has nothing
because-
to do with him being a jerk. It's just he's like you said, he's broken.
Yeah, I agree with Trev.
Okay.
I mean, that makes him a jerk, because he is broken, because he believes he's in the right on these things, but he's being led by these broken emotions that he's having to deal with, and it's not just one or two things, because the guilt from the Rana, it's failing the group being split, like going through the dream and seeing Raceland, and that, I mean, there's a lot that, I mean, because I want to say they do focus predominantly on the guilt between his actions with the Rana, but that's, I mean, you're talking about there still is an interlining thing when he gets hesitant, they still see him as a leader, kind of thing. So that's there too. Even at this point when they were like, well, where do we go, Tannis? And Fizban steps in and he's like, oh, well, I'm gonna be the leader. He did that knowing that Tannis was like at the point when he was like, I don't want to be the leader, like, please don't look at me like that. No, I agree. The boy broken.
I have one note on God's Home. Well, two actually. When I was a kid reading this and then hearing the audio now, I actually always thought it was God's Shome.
Mm.
And then
The way it's spelled.
It's just spelled out as one word.
It is, yeah.
So to hear someone reading it, I was like, oh snap, it's God's Home. So anyway, but it does say there was once a village named God's Home in Taman Busuk, further east, which showed on Tass's map. But that place now lies in ruins. This God's Home in the Kalkist is a mystical place, findable only by people of magic. In ancient times, there was a wonderful temple built here. It was destroyed at the time of the Cataclysm. It is at God's Home that Huma's dragonlance was purified and given power over the Dark Queen. Now, only findable by magic, so does that also mean that Fizban, if it wasn't for Fizban being the only magic user in the group,
Yeah,
they
they
would
wouldn't
have
have
gone
been.
left instead, or gone the other way, and not
And
gone this way.
And I want to assume that the book does show us that, and that's that whole scene where they're going through the forest, and Tannis and everybody else thinks they're lost, and Fizban's like, "No, we're going the right way." To them, they are lost. They just don't realize that he's cast a spell or something like that.
Doesn't Tass say, "Oh, Fizban knows the way"?
Yeah.
So they're kind of he's kind of the leader at that point.
My question is kind of related to that snippet right there, but I was hoping it would answer it. But thoughts on God's Home, like name and title, like what did it actually represent? We understand it's a city that was old back then. We know God's visited, but I mean,
their home on Earth.
Yeah,
was it their home on Krynn? Yeah. I thought it was awesome how they described obsidian lake, basically pool.
It's supposed to be like a blackstone. It's like an obsidian blackstone that at first looks like stone, and the closer he got, like it seemed to, it looked like stars and moons.
Very awesome.
No, they might cover it in other books, but I don't know what the roots for God's Home is.
I thought that was curious. With it, not only did we have the secret God's Home, but it was like known enough where the regular people had made their own version of that city, kind of thing. And they are on the map. If you look at the map, you can see like where this god's home is compared to the other god's home, which I thought was cool. All right, moving along. Chapter 4, Everman's story. At this point, this is like the third time we have touched base with this story, and every time we get a little more detail. So Tanis heads back to the group, standing over Beckermin, and they all witness him come back to life. Hey guys! Um, apologies are said both by Tanis and Beckermin. Tanis, bearing all the guilt for his action, asks Beckermin to tell his story to save others. Beckermin first explains envy of Flint dying and wanting to die at this point for peace and knowing the end was coming soon. They listen as Beckermin tells his story. He tells us the same story, going through a famine and depression in a town outside Naraka. Beckermin and his sister make it through the harshest winter they've ever seen. First day of spring, they go hunting and they find a trail that they had never seen before, leading to an abandoned temple within the forest. At the base of the column, Beckermin sees the gemstone. He starts prying. Jossa tries to stop him. He shoves her. She connects with the column, gashing her head open, blood now on the jewel. The ground opens up. The evil temple arises. Takesis arises in her five-headed dragon form, stating she could only re-enter the world through the gemstone, which works as a lock. She gives Beckermin the green gemstone, embedding it in his chest, knowing that this to be the Dark Queen. Beckermin is stunned by his actions, but suddenly his sister appears in front of the Queen, demanding Beckermin to run. He runs. Beckermin states for years he traveled, but to be stuck in a dream, eventually realizing it to be true and not a dream. Tanis asks what needs to be done to shut the door, and both believing it is in Naraka. They head out, Beckermin finding the way out. They mourn Flint and Taz, and Taz lets him go. They leave God's home behind. They travel to Naraka with stories of Flint. A poem is told about spring. And I do have a question related to this one. What's up, Jason? Thanks for stopping by. I love this chapter. I mean, it was all this around Flintstead. I thought they did an excellent job, and for me, it's a little ironic because Stern's death is just like, yeah, and then we get to like, Flint, and they're treated in such a different fashion. But so my question for this chapter is, what was with the hesitation with Beckermin retelling his story? Do you believe it was guilt alone?
I think he always carried guilt along because he blamed himself.
He does, and we know that at the very end because we know what he asks his sister when he gets there.
Yeah.
But that's why I asked, do you think it was guilt alone? Because remember, this is the second time he's told Tanis and this group the story. At this point, it's the third time the readers heard the story, and we get like a little bit variations as we go. Okay, so the reason I asked this is because he withheld information the first time, and this time he reveals a little more. Do you think it's only guilt?
Maybe a little bit of fear.
This is not talked about at all in all the books that we meet Beckermin. But think about a storyline if the wrong person would have grabbed him and found out who he was. Like, it's not really ever really, gone into because we just don't, it's not presented with that situation because Beckermin just takes off running the second he's seen by anybody, but like, you think about it, what if he would have fell into the wrong hands, and I believe that after so many years, like, in him knowing what the gemstone is, maybe not, knowing what it did or, but knowing that it resurrected him alone, that alone, so I think somebody would like find out and be like, ooh, I'd like to have that,
Yeah, where'd you get that? Maybe there's more.
Yeah.
I feel like he's warming up to the companions though as well. So he's divulging a little bit more, and the heat of the moment of Flint dying, and he's just. I feel like he was in a bit of a mad rush, wasn't he? That's why, like when he was running, and once his nerves were calming down a little bit, he just had a moment of being able to open up that much more.
That, and he was for so many years, kind of in seclusion, working on boats, kind of like secluding himself, and then being around people also probably had an effect on him. People that he trusted.
You forget how to talk to people probably after that long.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to agree to a degree. I could go with that, and that would be prevalent, especially after like hundreds of years on the planet, and especially what he's going through. You would be extremely cautious around people to begin with, let alone wanting to talk to them, kind of thing, because questions are always asked. Hey, where are you from? What's that big gemstone in your chest?
When
Yeah,
when Tanis was talking to Barum, in his head, he hadn't understood Barum because he didn't want to understand Barum. Barum had come to represent for Tanis those dark and secret things within himself he hated. An excerpt on that is when Tanis was growing up, the Speaker of the Suns referred to him as half of two things and all of nothing. Small wonder that he carried dark and secret things in him. So, I mean, that kind of does. That's a good description of
very
Tanis.
Yeah.
insightful.
Yeah,
Very
it is.
insightful.
You should have read that first, you son of a. No. Yeah, but I mean, because we see a lot of that throughout, and I want to say yes. I'm actually going back and I'm thinking about like if a cleric or somebody of holy indignation would have found him, what would have their, especially the evil he was hiding inside, whether or not he was evil, because he's not, but that would have went way differently. They probably would have killed him on the spot, kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Well, you just pop back up again.
Yeah. Would Tanis have kept on killing him if he would have told
he's
a
died
story?
many times.
Yeah.
Who's to say that hadn't happened?
Yeah, that's what I was looking. The right person found him. All right, moving along. Chapter 5, Naraka. The group makes it closer to Naraka, and they find the majority of the army right in front of them, learning that Fizban's actions actually saved them. Tanis starts making connections towards Fizban. Seeing the Dark Queen drawn in her army, Tanis believes gives them the chance to sneak in. We jump to the gates of Naraka, and the Dragon High Lords are moving their armies through gate based on rank. Arrakis first, Kitiara next. I'm going to say this wrong because this is the only time it comes up, but Lucaina, and then Torta. We learn of a previous ordeal related to Arrakis showing up 2 days late. We briefly meet Cyan Bloodbane, dueling with other dragons in this moment that we meet him. Armies quarreling with another through basically while they're waiting, because basically all these armies are stuck waiting at this gate. Takaisis is bringing them back. They're having to move through this gate one by one. Arrakis shows up late on purpose to cause disdain and fights within the other armies, which it does happen, and that's when we run into Cyan Bloodbane again. Okay, so the guard at the entrance is alerted towards a group trying to enter. Tanis and Caramon pose as Dragon Army soldiers, bringing prisoners but fail to have any papers, which alert the guards. Believed to be deserters, and both Tanis and Caramon are arrested. As they're being taken away, Kitiara happens to come to the gates. Tanis tells the group to follow his lead. That's not necessarily true. He basically tells Fizban and Elvin to relay that message to Caramon, which he does eventually, but that's kind of how that goes down. He breaks free, calling out to Kitiara, explaining to her that the guards were going to arrest him for desertion, and she frees him, and they head out on the Dragon Sky while Caramon and the others are taken to jail. Tanis believing them to be safe. We jump to the group, and Caramon telling a Draconian guard that Tanis would come for them. Tika is ruffled up, and Caramon has to defend her, but is still keeping up the act of selling the prisoners, and it works. Barum is super depressed, as As they are moved to the prison, both Caramon and Tass think of escape, but both find it impossible due to flying citadels and dragons watching from above. During a moment of a passing army, Tass relays Tanis's Elvis message. Tass starts talking too loudly, and a guard hits him hard enough where he passes out. Okay, it kind of dazes him. Caramon once again protects Tass, picking Tass up and carrying him. They make it to the Temple of the Dark Queen and are taken to the dungeons. That's where this chapter ends. I do have one question for this. Why, after KTR frees Tanis, would the guards keep Caramon prisoner? Especially within the story that they presented, Tanis and Caramon were together, and I understand Tanis has off, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not asking why KTR didn't take Caramon. No, why did the prisoner continue with the desertion? After he saw proof of what Tanis was saying, he did work for KTR. Why? And I get the story, written wise, why it makes sense, but why would he still have done that? Any thoughts?
Just a grunt personality.
Yeah, scared of him. Not smart enough to realize.
I can go with that, and we have seen proof of that throughout the series. I'm gonna, because I didn't really have an answer to that because everything else kind of made sense, but I was like, why would after he saw proof of what they were saying, why would he still you deserters? I mean, she's right there, bro. That's who they said they were.
No papers. He had no papers.
Right. But you don't have the papers.
Am I the only person that got the Mordor vibes when they first rolled up to this place?
A lot of this, yeah. And I don't want to reference that a lot because I like that this is its own thing. But I did mention in the last episode that I was starting to see more like Lords of the Ring, kind of vibes. Specifically, Return of the King.
It happened last time, but
yeah,
and I wasn't here on the last time we did this. But what do you think of the flying citadels? Is that a pretty cool concept?
I like the idea.
Almost there wasn't enough of them. It would have been great to have one crash into a mountain or crash into the ocean or just a crazy epic scene with those citadels. Would have been
or
nice.
Maybe we would have went to one of the citadels, and there was a reason they had to go to a citadel. And I want to say that's my problem with the citadels in this series is they're just underused. They're such a cool idea that come out of nowhere, and then they're just like super in the background. They're yeah, they're up there, so during the whole in-game stuff, they're not present, but they are mentioned after, but there's still these flying citadels out there, and that's kind of all. I mean, but I do like the idea of them. I kind of talked about how unpurposely they are, how over the top it is, kind of thing. I don't know. But I do like the idea. I thought it was kind of cool.
I think they're awesome.
And you talk about a scary ass thing to see. Isn't that Palanthas? You see this flying city. Didn't I used to live there? That's where my ex is. And be like, man, Nico's had that great, croissant shop. All right. Chapter 6, Tanis. Barges. What is this?
Bargains.
That's what it is. Gakan investigates. Thank you, Jess. Tanis and KTR talk. He explains Flint is dead, brings up Sturm, which KTR bears no malice, asks about her brothers, to which Tanis cuts off the small talk. She threatens torture. He states both lost at the Blood Sea. I have to throw that in there. I absolutely love that part. Hey, what about my brother? Well, let's get done. Let's get on to the, and she's all no, I'll fucking kill you right now if you don't tell me about it. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, well, and I like that this is the one time that we see Tanis lying that he doesn't have an issue with lying because every other time he lied, he was like, when he lied, and this time he was just like, yeah, both your brothers lost at the Blood Sea. He came out all smooth this time. All right, so Tanis wants in exchange him for Lorana, to which Kit states she and the Dark Queen have no use for him. Tanis explains that he would also work for the Dragon Army directly under Kit. Kitiara says she needs to consider this. They are to attend a ceremony that night. Tanis will don ceremonial armor and must serve and obey Kitiara at every whim. Tanis thinks this might save Lorana. Lord Soth shows up, asking and making sure Kitiara is still holding the end of her bargain. Kitiara stresses he will still get Lorana after the Dark Queen was done with her. He asks about Tanis, and she explains she plans to break him. She knows Tanis lied about her brothers and sends Gakan to find the guard who stopped Tanis. Looking for his companion, she demands Soth to attend the ceremony and to watch Ariakas. Soth warns Kit that she is still human. We jump to Gakan and learn Gakan has been following the group from the Crystal Staff. Ordered the attack on Kuei Shu, heads to Kitiara with knowledge of the group. She takes this info to Takaisis, who realizes Paladin is helping. Kitiara orders Gakan after them, and we learn he was a shadow throughout most of the journey. You talked about this before, almost catching them, where the Griffin saved him kind of thing. Now looking for Caramon and friends, and I think I put Ariaka, Naraka. Feeling pressed against time, Gakan with a group of Draconians find the captain. The captain explains Tanis had companions and prisoners and were taken to prison. Gakan, knowing that the Everman is with them now. I do have one question for this. This is where that chapter leaves off. Are we in belief that Tanis believes Kitiara to go along with the trade?
No. By now, he knows what Kitiara is really like.
I want to say I'm in very much at sometimes maybe disbelief and sometimes in agreement, because there are some moments when I believe that he is very much like he believes Kitiara to hold up, like he did believe that he was going to have to switch with Tanis, switch with Lorana for Tanis kind of thing. And so the same way she's kind of leading on Soth, because we later find out that it has been leading him on, specifically when it pertains to Lorana kind of thing.
It's not like that's going to bite her in the butt.
Yeah, that's just an excerpt about
Lord
Soth grabbing Kitiara by the arm or the hand and then letting go when she told her to, or when she demanded him to. And that insinuates that actually Lord Soth has got a little thing for Kitiara, which I kind of skimmed over that concept, but it's interesting to hear it directly from the mouth of Madness.
I want to say we get that in two different moments, because at the end of the book, when Soth is about to catch, Tanis and Lorana, and he totally could, and Kitiara stops him. In that moment, he kind of is all like, yeah, I'm eternal, and I'm waiting on the day when I find this woman who's going to sit with me on this eternal throne, and I'm looking at you, Kitiara. I want to say, yeah. And I want to say, technically, once you get down to like the thinking of like his whole part of the plan, it kind of makes sense that he didn't want Lorana at all. That if he got her, okay. But I don't think that was like part of his thinking was like, I'm going to get her soul. No, I think it was on the other end. Like, this is getting me closer to obtaining Kitiara kind of thing. That's the way it felt for me. And Kitiara is just the fool that's not recognizing this kind of thing. That it kind of like to deal with the devil kind of thing.
Well, why wouldn't you just go out and take it if you really wanted it?
Because I think in this scenario, it's like that old saying where they have to give it.
Yeah,
he can't take it.
Yep.
He can't take it. She has to willingly, and he kind of like almost referenced that, like at the end, like oh, I could take you and kill you and make you undead. I don't think that's what he wants.
Yeah, I was going to point out. I don't know, since I missed the last episode with Soth. One of the things that fascinated Soth, and I don't remember where it's pointed out at, but there was a deal where for him to work with Takesis, one of the generals had to spend the night in Dargar Keep, and Kitiara did it. So she gained his respect. And it was from that point on, she became his sole focus, whether she realized it or not.
You think about that, and he does, and that kind of ties into something else he says at the end of the book. But you think about it, a person willing to spend the night in Dargar Keep, and what was in Dargar Keep was him and his undead army and these undead maidens that wail every night. I'm pretty sure that alone was a feat in itself, just the fact that touching one of these people could kill you, kind of thing. So like that spark was, I want to say that, was like, somebody brave enough, or somebody crazy enough, or I don't know.
She's definitely got some problems.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 7, The Temple of the Queen of Darkness. Our group now locked in a cell in the dungeon. Tika is trying to wake an unconscious Tasselhoff. Tass does not wake and thinks he is now he thinks he is now a much different Kender than before, which I would very much agree. He's very much a different Kender. Hey, Brian, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Thinking back on Fizban's words and the dark path, Barum appearing to be steadily going insane. They learn they're in a holding cell. Tass tries to assist Barum, and Barum starts attacking the cell walls, eventually trying to bash the door down. Guards are called, but Gakan shows up and discovers Barum by uncovering the gemstone, opens the cell, grabs Barum, and orders the other to be killed. We jump to Tanis, Kitiara, and Kitiara making their way into the Hall of Audience of Takesis. As they enter the hall, we see 4 raised platforms with thrones on each, and we learn only High Lords are permitted on the platforms. One final platform with that has been carved to look with a hooded cave, kind of like a cobra, directly in the middle. Tana sees a hallway attached to the middle platform that houses the living shadow. Ariakas arrives wearing the crown of power. Kitiara tells Tanis about this. Kitiara orders Lorana in, and Tanis tries talking up to Kit. Kitiara explains her plan for Lorana and wanting only the crown. She also warns Tanis to be convincing with Takesis. Kitiara takes her platform with Lord Soth bowing to her. We jump back to Karamon's group. Karamon about to jump the guards, but Barum grabs Gakan, smashing him into a wall, splitting his skull and basically his head open, then continuing to munch the skull until pulp. Barum mentions she is calling me, and he runs off. Karamon jumping into action, and everybody else joins in. They try to follow Barum. The group is split, with Karamon going after Barum, and the others a distraction for the guards. Tika kisses Karamon, then he takes off. Tass and Tika gaining the attention of the other guards. This chapter was just, I want to say, fun. There's not. I want to say there's some emotions in there, but it's just a joy. Like, I love a good prison break and how writers write prison breaks, and this whole thing with Barum going crazy and just bursting through everything. I love that. Like, it totally fits and it works for a good prison break, kind of thing.
And Gakan got what was coming to him.
He did. You talk about.
But it
No, I didn't. I didn't. I want to say much props to the writer, because they build this guy up to like some epic degrees. And man, if he didn't have a Stephen King villain ending where he was just like, he's gone, I thought he was going to amount to a lot more. So I could say kudos to them, because I did not see the scene coming with Bam just grabbing him and be like, oh yeah,
bam. Just done.
Especially since, remindedly that they had no weapons, like that's the big hassle with Karamon and Tass, because they're hardened warriors, but they got no weapons. And Task has his like little dagger. He's like, hot ready,
Well, Khan didn't do too much. I mean, what else did he do? He was the rat when he followed Tanis
He's
back
just-
to the inn,
he's-
right before they went out to the maelstrom. He was there. I don't remember what else like that he did, and then he showed up here again.
They mention a lot of his feats in this book, and supposedly he's been shadowing the crew for most of the journey. Like he's
like a month behind him.
Yeah, at certain points and stuff like that. But as far as like, and he's supposed to be like feared and Katara's on. I mean, we see like when he walks up to other Draconians and they find out who he is, they kind of like take a step. They're all.
But they really give you that information right before they kill him off. Like
they do.
You don't have that information of him being such a badass. He's just more of just like a creepy little minion.
Yeah,
of Kitiara. But he'd actually been like on the trail. Like he was a detective like this whole time, and you never knew it. It would have been nice if they had the foresight to go back to like, okay, let's actually add this guy in a couple chapters here and there. Like he's always like 2 steps behind the companions, which that's what they just portrayed him as. But then, boom, he just got smashed. It's great, but it almost leaves you like, yeah, they could have actually made us enjoy that a little bit more. Like I felt like it happened so quick that I didn't get to enjoy that this character finally got his due.
He felt like a glorified Igor, like because he had like cool feats attached to him, but like technically within story, like he never did anything cool. But he's presented as like, oh well, he's about to do something cool. He's been following the whole time. Like, I mean, he does burn the village of Quayshu, and we find out that's what pissed off Verminard was his actions. Because he was killing his own men, supposedly. I want to assume because it was probably like Verminard's crew finding out that Kitiara was like involving her, because we do know there's that the angst between the Dragon High Lords. Like they don't like working together, their armies don't like mashing kind of thing. So I want to assume it had some ties to that. Like I would have liked that story, like why, and it could have been like a paragraph of the story on what, like the actions of what happened in Quayshu, why, like, because I believe it to be something like that. Now that you think about it, like, I believe that, like, Gakon and his little, like, detailed group of Kitiara, Draconians were, infiltrating Verminard's, area, and they got pissed, and then Gakon's crew killed some of his men, and Verminard found him later, and he's like, we're not supposed to be killing our own guys. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I can see him just every chapter we've read in this trilogy. I could just see him trailing behind him, interrogating everybody from unicorns to ghosts to everything in between. Just like showing up, he's rowing a boat in the Blood Sea of Istar. He's
talking to the Forest Master.
He's haggling. He's haggling with the DLs. He's wearing like an underwater. He's got like the bubble on.
That's the way I pictured. That's literally how I pictured it. Was every step they took, he was right there, and he was questioning him. He didn't kill him, He was just like, talking to the Forest Master, and then he went to the Griffins,
Well, on that alone, I got to give the writers props for at least painting that picture that was happening.
I want to say it was a great explanation because that element was there in the first 2 books without explanation. We knew they had a shadow, we just didn't know what. So, it's not that I'm saying, oh, that's an easy thing to do, but it's nice to have that thread because there are a lot of times when threads are not tied up, kind of thing. So I do have one question real quick for this one. So we do learn Kitiara's big desire for the major trilogy in this is the crown of power. Minus Tanis, how did she intend to gain it without Tanis? Tanis is a huge step into her gaining that crown, especially since it's on a whole other platform away from her. Before Tanis, she just had Lorana as leverage. How did she intend to get the crown of power?
Maybe she was going to tell Lorana to do what Tanis did.
I find that very troublesome.
Like,
The only thing I could come up with is maybe by presenting Lorana it would cause some kind of confusion, and she was just going to outright attack, Ariakis's crew, which even stretching there, I think Ariakis. Well, I don't know. Like, there is that
Well,
question.
she had Soth.
Yeah, I was
There-
going to say she
Soth's
had
army
Soth.
just by
That's-
pure power, and then whenever the whole all the Sturm stuff happened,
That's
and
my question: is do you think Soth could have taken Ariakis?
Oh,
Or do you think-
absolutely.
you think
Absolutely,
so?
without a doubt.
Okay.
yeah,
Because I was kind of wondering
Death
because
Knight's one of the most powerful creatures on Krynn for sure.
Okay. Well, because
Oh,
the book does mention that after that meeting with Soth, Ariakis was prepared for him. He specifically states that, like, in one of his, like, monologues or whatever. So, but I was thinking, yeah, you could contain Soth, but then he's got his army, and
well, the thing about Soth is everybody thinks they're prepared for Soth until they have to deal with Soth. Even Strahd and Ravenloft thought he had Soth under his thumb, and then he realized he didn't.
I want to believe it's a lot of that because we do see a lot of the arrogance from Ariakis, kind of, and that kind of leads to his doom. No, but just a thought, like how she had planned to gain this achievement, especially because this is where we find out about the Crown of Power. It's never mentioned before this. It's not even like an element with it. It kind of reminds me of the Dragon Orb. They come out of left field, and all of a sudden, it's a focus on the story, which I'm not mad at or anything. But at this moment, KTR's plans were, pretty prevalent and easy to get behind as the reader. And then we get here, and I'm like, how was she planning to do this? Like, was this just going to be a mad rush chaos situation? Like, but the way she talks about it is she had like this like determined plan. So I'm curious to see how she would have done this with,
I would have said that she would have planned something like at a meeting like that, and she wouldn't have revealed Soth until then.
Soth was her
Yeah.
trump card,
Yeah.
and I agree with what Jesse said.
Maybe she wouldn't have even got the crown right now. Maybe it would have had to been a play for later.
True. Curiouser and curiouser. All right. Chapter 8, The Queen of Darkness. We are with Ariakis, and it gives more detail about Takaisis' platform. No stairs to it, just an iron grate into the living shadow. And this is where it gets kind of muddled, because if you look at artist renditions, it's kind of a platform that has like a railing that leads to this gate. Some others, it's like the grate is above them. In the story, it's kind of described where the grate is above the platform. That's the kind of way I was taking it. But then I looked at like Larry's art, and it was kind of to the side. I mean, it really doesn't matter. But it was a little trying to determine how this whole thing looked. But basically, it's a big room with a bunch of platforms in it. So we look at KTR's, but focus. He's looking around. He looks at KTR's platform, but focuses on Torda's platform. But he is absent. He calls out for Torda, and we learn from a hobgoblin that Torda was slain at Kinderhome, the land of the Kinders. And basically, they rebelled, and it was retaken. Kinderhome was lost to the Dragon Army. A Kinder named Cronin Thistlenot killed Torda. With a wave of Ariaka's hand, his army tends toward Kit's army, but a wave of darkness and fear engulfed the hall, and everyone is paralyzed. The darkness lives, and health returns. Takaisis has entered the hall. Tanis notices that she is not truly there, blocked by something, and Tanis remembers Beckermin the door. Takaisis speaks to all in their minds, scolding Ariakis and praising Kitiara, asks for Lorana. Tanis and Kitiara move to the middle, and Kitiara calls in Lord Soth and his army. Bringing Lorana, he vanishes. Lorana struggles with her bindings, to which Tanis has to hold himself from helping her. Lorana gets free, takes in the room, sees the Dark Queen and Tanis. Tanis, using a look, tries to dissuade Lorana from reacting. He achieves this with consequence. Kitiara presents the Golden General to Takaisis, announces her crimes. The Queen says to reward Kitiara after Lorana has been killed in some death chamber. Kit asked for two favors. One, that Tanis be allowed to serve the Dark Queen. Tanis has a moment thinking to self-sacrifice himself and Lorana, and decides the honorable thing is for her to live and him to die, paying for past misdeeds. Tanis bows, and Kit will place him as her commander. He is asked to go in front of Takaisis with a warning from Kitiara, praying and hoping she would not see through his deception. He is able to hold sway due to her not being completely there, and Tanis extremely notices this weakness now. She takes different forms. First, a five-headed dragon, next a sexy goddess, next a tall evil knight. As she shifts, her eyes stay the same. Tanis breaks and grovels in front of her. I got a couple questions for this chapter. And actually I had a couple for the other chapters too, but I'm trying to save time. All right, so why give the stone to Baron before she was whole? Like, what was the reasoning? Now, I could get behind, like, she made it through and wanted to hide it so no one could relock her up. But, like, and we know the whole situation as it played down, but why not fully come through?
He's a vessel. He basically has to go through the door, and it'll allow her to come into the world. She basically had to put an essence of herself into a vessel to open the door to let her back in.
Why not get him to do that back then? You think that was
He ran. She tried to get him, and he ran. Remember, her sister held her back.
Jocelyn tells her to run. But, like, why not convince him, like, before then? Why not be the first thing is to grab him, pull him through that gate so she can get whole? Like, I almost felt like it was by design. She didn't want to be fully through kind of thing.
No, I think it's just she didn't have a chance to. He was scared, and he ran before she had a chance to. Because at that point, that's around the time of the cataclysm, so yeah. She probably doesn't have too much power, too much sway in the world at that point.
No, she was weak, and at that time, like, supposedly that's one. I mean, they go into the balancing, and the dark at that time had kind of fled the world for good or for bad, kind of thing. No, and I'm not saying it doesn't make sense.
It might have also been something to where he had to do it willfully, go through the gate willfully or something.
Okay, I didn't think of that, and I like that. That I could get behind, where she couldn't just like grab him and pull him through. Okay, I can get behind that, because I mean, story-wise, it makes sense, especially when we get all this information. It lines up with everything we've gotten so far, especially with Baron running and not knowing exactly why he's running, kind of thing.
She's calling out to me.
Mm-hmm. Now, that tracks on, like, I mean, her wanting to find him, kind of thing. All right, so question, and this could be spoiler content, so it might not go that far. Do we know more about this Kinder Cronin? Is he a character that continues on throughout D&D lore, or is this a one-time? Because I love this fact that we get this, that the Kinders revolt, and I will like. That's actually related to my next question, is the irony that the Kinder folk are the first folk to revolt against. And I'm not saying at this point that other people haven't fought the Dragon Army. No, this is the first people who actively revolt, like as one, against the Dragon Army. And it's due to the actions of this Cronin Thistle Knot. I was kind of wondering if we had more books of this. I was hoping maybe Tass tracks down this.
Well,
there's nothing about Tass. There's no like Tass book per se after this. I wouldn't doubt if he's mentioned though again in all the books that come after this. I wouldn't doubt if he's mentioned again, but he's not like a big player or anything.
Well, I tell you what, this character, I think if he's going to be anywhere, it's in the book Kender, Goy Dwarves, and Gnomes. It's written by a third party, I believe, not Weis and Hickman. But this is the only known, I think, mention of this character, to my recollection, in the whole Dragonlance series. written of the originals anyway by Weis and Hickman. It does say here, Takesis must have still been using Toady as a game piece because he was expected to arrive at Naraka as the White High Lord. The story of his oh-so-sad demise, at least the first one, is told in Lord Toad's disastrous hunt in Kender, Gully Dwarves, and Gnomes.
So it is. There
Maybe Cronin Thistle Knot is actually in that book. I'd have to look it up, but he's definitely not in any further Weis and Hickman's.
That's actually something that I'd be really interested in reading, is this chunk of story of why Torta was, I get why he was sent over there. They're trying to conquer all the people. No, but I would really like to get how that adventure folded out, how he was eventually killed. Not only could I believe it'd be this comedy-filled adventure because we're talking about Torta here, or Toad, or I don't know.
I want to see what he looks like because he was so fat he had need help getting on his dragon.
Yeah, he did.
That's probably why he lost. He's freaking Java.
I wanted that at the end, and we're gonna get there when we get there. But I kind of wanted to see Torta on a dragon, like in a fight. Yeah, but it would, what about the irony of the Kinderfolk, or the first folk that actually like rebelled? I mean, we're talking about humans, elves, dwarves. At this point, we do know that they all have had active involvement with the dragon armies, but this is the first we hear of solid people revolting. And what's that say about the Kinder people? Honestly, throughout the series, they're probably like my favorite invention that I don't know if it was them that came up with the Kinder folk or whatever, but I mean, because they're so like the hobbits, but they're not, kind of thing. And I just love the description. Tass is by far one of my favorite characters, and it's due to his Kinder nature, kind of thing.
It makes me think that it wasn't so much a rebellion, but just them causing chaos and just shit going wrong.
I want to assume it's the same thing, and I need to see this. Like, why wasn't this written out? Like, why wasn't this just a chapter in the book, kind of thing?
There's a lot of fandom stuff on this, so, but yeah, he's a deal.
What is this? Well-toned, missile body. One ear has a scar on it from an ogre fight in Krynn. Man, silver-haired, crop short.
We might not get through the story though if we go on this
side quest. Yeah.
It's a side quest for sure, but I'm interested in it.
I thought it was interesting. All right, let's move along. Chapter 9, and especially like a major feat, because it's not like, it just the way it's presented to Ariakas, on the platform. He's like, sir, Torta got killed by a Kinder,
Yeah.
Of all things that could have
been
announced. Yeah. I imagine, if Torta was going to die, it would have happened by accident, like an ogre sat on him, or something like that. A dragon sat on him. All right, Chapter 9, Horns of Doom. We are with Caramon, and he is searching for Baron, trying to figure out which way he went. He finds bodies that have been killed with strong hands and takes off in pursuit. Caramon hears a commotion and finds Baron killing a couple of the guards. Caramon jumps into the fight, killing 2 Dracos with his bare hands, but missing one and taking small damage to his side. Baron saves Caramon, then tries to take off. Caramon stops him, asks him where his destination was, and Baron stating that they are close. Caramon questions now what the guards were guarding so deep below the dungeon. Baron was walking to some arches that Caramon takes notice. Different build from the rest of the room. Baron starts acting strangely but mentions Jocelyn, and Caramon understands he must go through the arches. Makes a torch and they head towards the arches. Caramon takes notice of cobwebs and hears a trumpet blare. We jump to Tass and Tika, and their plan worked with all the draconian guards. They make it sound like a lot. It's 7, and it is a lot because they have no weapons, kind of thing. I think Tika has like a simple sword or something like that, and that's about it. But they do make it seem like there's a ton of them, and it's just that. Running with no direction, they start to tire, but notice the long hallway is slightly leading up. Tass becomes hopeful. They are heading out towards freedom. They keep running and start to feel a fresh breeze, and they run with renewed hope. The Draconians slow, and they run into a dead end. Two giant doors locked. Tass explains it is a simple lock and just needs a little time. Tika is to try and stop the Dracos. Tass proceeds and starts seeing notes of familiarness. I could say that. And realize that this is the moment in the dream. A simple lock. Tass thinks through kinder terms and also thinks of Fizban and Flint. Picks the lock. Tika falls at that moment. Tass is struck with the poison. Um, with a poison needle and then seized by the Draconians. Tass hears horns blare, and the Draconians suddenly leave. Poison overtaking him, he slumps against the wall, telling Caramon and Tika he was sorry. Jumped to Tanis, and he was wishing the gods would strike him down. Takaisis gets suddenly distracted. Kitiara pushes Tanis aside and asks her second favor for Lord Soth to be granted Lorana's soul. Lorana breaks for a moment, but finds composure due to not wanting to show weakness. Tanis tries protesting, but is broken off by Takaisis approving both favors. Tanis to drop his sword in front of Ariakas, a normal ritual. Tanis is slightly thrown off by this, and Kitiara gives him brief instructions, but don't do anything rash. Now enraged at all the new and sudden info, he walks towards Ariakas, thinking now that Kitiara had all these pieces, had all the pieces, basically, like she's controlling, everything. His mind remembers the crown of power and what Lord Soth had said about it, notices Ariakas had no guards toward his platform. He climbs, gathering strength and focus with each step. But as he gets closer, he realizes that Ariakas is a magic user, and he deems his plan to fail. But as he is thinking this, a voice tells Tanis that they would aid him against his magic to only fear the man. Tanis, 3 steps away from Ariakas, fake kneels, then stabs him in the chest at the exact moment his magical barrier breaks. Ariakas, not dead, backhands Tanis, who almost faints, but comes to as Ariakas stands over him to offer his killing blow. But his heart gives out. Ariakas begging Takaisis to save him, but she doesn't, and he dies. The crown rolls off his head. Lord Soth appears and tries to grab the crown, but Tanis gets it first and it downs it. Horns blare again. Everybody stops. Tanis thinks this is due to the crown, but the army moves out due to the alert. Tanis remembers the horn representing death in the past. And that's where this chapter ended. Man, what a fantastic chapter that was. Say hi to YouTube comic people. Hey, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, you missed the part whenever he was going up the stairs and he gets the whisper in his ear and he looks over and sees the black robes sitting on Takis's platform.
I did, and I kind of briefed over that because he didn't make sense of it at that moment. We know what it is, And that was like the whisper in the ear, especially reading that. Like there was
the all-time moment.
There wasn't a moment where I didn't think it was Race. It surprised me that Race was there all of a sudden, but it didn't surprise me that it was Race who was whispering in his ear, especially from the audiobook version. It kind of gives it away because they do it in Race voice kind of thing. All right, so I really need somebody to break down Kitiara's master plan at this point. Because if it wasn't for Tanis doing this, like, how did she really plan to even make it out of the scenario with her trying to betray Ariakas? Because even at this moment, there was like a brief time where Ariakas is already like thinking about killing her after this, scenario is going down. So I want to believe that Kitiara kind of had to do this knowing that something was going to go down kind of thing. It just leads into the whole, like, hey, Angel, thanks for stopping by. It just goes into the whole evil devours itself, which is said throughout the whole thing. And I kind of, at this point, I kind of thought that's what this whole scenario was going to be. That's why Takaisis is just like sitting up there, and I kind of figured she was just going to let her whole, and she kind of does, right? And everything goes down and she's like, who's going to win? So they could be my stronger commander,
Yeah.
She's willing to risk her whole army just to see who's going to be the strongest to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I was all like, I mean, I could get some pre-hand stuff, but we're talking about in-game stuff, and this is like, you're going to do as the master of everything. This is what you're going to do right before you win everything kind of thing, and you're just going to let your army tear itself to pieces.
It does say here, why doesn't the Dark Queen pay attention to the machinations going on? I believe that the Queen of Darkness is completely aware of what is going on here. It matters little to her who is in charge of the Dragon High Lords. Indeed, it is the strength that she wishes to support. The fact is that the Queen is paying too much attention to what is happening here, a fact that allows Barum to go unnoticed by the Dark Queen.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually the question I had.
Just the thought of power and the action of power that it blinds her by.
Because that actually goes into my next question. My question is, Race reacts to his trap, which we find out later on is his trap that he set up to protect the arches. Why does the Queen's not even interested in it? She's more interested in the drama versus, Barum. I mean, because that's what it would signify is like, hey, Barum's trying to go through the arches kind of thing. There is a moment in the book when she does react. It's the first horn, and in her 5-headed dragon form, all 5 heads turn in that direction, but then she's brought back to the drama and she's more interested in who's going to be my stronger commander, kind of thing.
I think Kitiara had she thinks that she probably had the upper hand at that point. She feels like she's more of a favored servant of the Queen than Ariakis, and she has Soth's army, and then she was about to have Tanis by her side. So I think she had enough power to overthrow him at that point.
Yeah.
I want to say, yeah, and I want to believe that's the overall, because the way she's lining up the chess pieces and that's the way it feels kind of thing is well, I have this to overpower that. I have this, and it's kind of seems like how it was all going to play out. I kind of like that, that Kitiara is praised, but Ariakis is shunted, but it's over squabbling, and that's exactly what Takaisis wants is the squabbling. Why are you, demeanoring him for doing it? But that's exactly what you want,
Well, you said something interesting, and I got to just say that is about the Queen. It kind of reminds me of just the split personality. There's the Constellation Queen, the dragon, and with the 5 heads. And then there's Techesis, the actual, maybe the physical or the, almost physical form. They're the same being, but they have different agendas. Just like Fizban and Paladin, they have, they're the same being, different agendas.
I could go with that.
And that's why she's the physical form, and not the 5-headed dragon. She's just power hungry. And so the Constellation version, the 5-headed dragon is trying to keep that bitch in check.
I would say that does explain her flipping through the different forms too, because that's not really explained besides just a visage of power kind of thing. Let me flip through my, there wasn't kind of an explanation for that, but with that, it does make sense on, with these different personalities, tied to. I can get behind that. And Ninja, this was an extremely easy read, but you got to start at the beginning.
I thought it was that was kind of just a display of power, of godly power. I mean, it'll make anybody shrink. Yeah, and that kind
of. I think, my opinion, if I would have to draw a comparison to something similar from Forgotten Realms without giving too much of a spoiler. Loth, she's the Spider Queen of Forgotten Realms. Of course, she is the head deity of the Drow. There's certain instances in the Drift books where all these Drow are just hell bent on trying to get this guy because they consider him a blasphemer of the religion, but he keeps getting out of these impossible odds, and then finally, sometime later on, you have a character go, well, what if Loth is actually protecting him because she is the goddess of chaos, and it brings chaos. See what I'm saying?
Okay. That
I
makes
do.
sense.
It does.
Absolutely. So how can you make sense? Yeah, you can't even make sense of an evil world if you're so focused and hell bent on chaos itself.
Exactly.
11.
All right. Chapter 10. Whoever wears the crown rules. Caramon and Barum are halted by horn blasts, learning the arches had a spell cast on them. Anyone who walks through the horns blare. Through the arches, and now is a low-hanging cavern with a stream. They walk through the arches, and now after the arches, it's a low-hanging cavern with a stream. They get in, follow the stream. They find tiny dragon larvae inside the water, but they can't break through the protection they wear, which is basically like boots and stuff like that. They turn a corner, still inside the stream, and they can hear guards coming behind them. Caramon is struck in the face by something and drops the torch in the water. Darkness. They stand still for a time, then Barum sees the column and his sister. Raceland appears. Jump to Tanis, and Lord Soth is coming to kill Tanis. Tanis orders Kit to order him to stop or he will throw the crown into the army. She does, but asks Tanis to bring her the crown. Soth and Tanis walk side by side together. Tanis makes it to Kit and denies her the crown, puts it on his head, states him and Lorana would leave Kit's army to protect them, and then Tanis would give her the crown outside the city. He grabs Lorana, in which she uses this moment, stuns Tanis, grabs his sword, and stabs Kitiara in the face. Then turns the sword on Tanis, pushes him off into the crowd below. The crown was off his head. She jumps down after, and chaos ensues over the crowd. Tanis getting trampled. And that's where that chapter ends. No specific. I want to say that this was one of the more confusing where I had to go back and look at it, like, because it's specifically related that Lorana stabs Kitiara in the face up to the hilt, and
No,
then
it
later on,
says she hits her with the hilt butt.
is it?
She hits her with the hilt butt.
I went back like 2 or 3 times, and I could have sworn it said she's. No, but I just chalked it up to like she got like magically ill because later on it's just like a busted lip or something. But that makes sense if it was just a hill. But I will say like what a great moment and not so great of thoughts for Tanis, because like how did you not think that seeing you in draconian armor with she was just gonna be like, yes, Tanis, let's go,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she jabbed the sword hilt into Kitiara's face.
Okay. See, I took it the other way.
It's like she was pulling it out of her.
Yeah,
of
and she
her deal.
hit
She's
him
going
that
boom
way.
and just
Okay.
nails her as she's pulling it up. Is what I envisioned.
Something
Yeah.
funny I noted was Caramon when he first saw those hatchlings. He said, or it did say that was like, he had faced death in many forms, but none more terrifying than this. Made me think of like the Bloodseed of Istar, when your brother tried to kill you in the dream, or did kill you in the dream. Just all these little things. I was like, or no,
Bigger dragons themselves.
really little baby dragons,
Right?
Come on.
I mean, to the point where they can't even break the leather on your boots or whatever. Like, I mean,
yeah,
maybe
I
like
don't
torturous, just getting nibbled to death. I don't know.
But that point is justified by the authors. It does say this experience later led Caramon to write, shuddering, how can you compare a crocodile, no matter how large or powerful it is, with even the smallest dragon hatchling? So it must be fierce. They're that.
and it does give the reader detail about the dragon. Like from Caramon's perspective, he believes that if you fell in the water, they'd rip his like flesh from the bone and stuff. And I mean they are. I mean we get a little picture. They are shown with like jagged teeth
and they say his
stuff.
leather boots protect him, but these guys
Yeah.
are already like level 13 and above. Like leather is going to be enchanted leather or reinforced leather.
Caramon is pretty smart and savvy and clever and quick-witted in these last chapters as well. He wasn't like just getting out of harm's way with and how he was dealing with the Draconians, it didn't paint that normal picture that he's a big oaf and an ox. And there's multiple case scenarios throughout the series that contradict itself about is he a big dumb ox or is he actually pretty smart? I'd say he's pretty smart. Maybe it's just smart under pressure, and when there's no pressure, he just gets pretty stupid.
I want to say yes. That's what I lead to, because most of the times when they show him with intelligence, it's under pressure moments kind of thing, and it's not just to disregard the character. I don't think because it's not like the book berates him for being unintelligent or anything, which they could have done. Writers do that a lot. I feel it's something like that. Especially because it's Ray's brother, kind of thing. I feel like
he has great battle awareness and survival, but he has no common sense.
I agree. All right, so chapter 11, Jossa calls. Caramon now face to face with Race. Race tells Caramon he is the last guardian. Caramon asks if he wears the black robes and that he sounds different. Race says he only needs Beckermin, states he is not immortal, and he has the key to allowing Tychus to fully enter this world. Caramon is confused. Caramon tries to warn Beckermin that Race needs time to cast, to which Race produces a mini sun, blinding and dazing Caramon. He kind of slips and falls back in the river. Race stating he is more powerful now. Tanis had helped him slay the one stronger magic user, now him kind of the strongest magic user out there. Beckermin rushes toward the jeweled column and to Jocelyn. Race tells Caramon he allows this. As Beckermin gets closer, the gem glows and Caramon can now see Jocelyn standing in the column. Beckermin screams for Jocelyn to forgive him, and she replies there is nothing to forgive. Beckermin smashes into the column and impales himself. Beckermin dies. The ground around Caramon starts to shake. Back to Tanis. He is scrambling, trying to survive the mob. Soth calls out to Tanis, sending his undead army after Tanis, but the ground starts to crack and crumble. Darkness falls. Tychus calls out that he has betrayed her. Tanis tries to find Lorana. The chaos stops, and Tychus in her dragon form becomes solid, cracks the roof, and then vanishes. And that's where that chapter leaves off. And I want to say I have no questions related to this chapter. More so comments kind of thing. We were getting to the extreme end, and I want to say I was kind of a little off-put and surprised that we didn't get more dragonlance fights, especially since it was so hinted in the first two books. I kind of saw them being major players to the end, and they're it's not that they aren't mentioned, because KTR does have a moment when she mentions the crimes for to Tychus, and that was one of the crimes she mentioned was the bringing back of the dragonlances. But I will say I was a little disappointed we didn't get more dragon on dragonlance fights kind of thing at the end of this book. I'm not going to say I was disappointed with the ending. I'm not at all. I love the ending. I thought it was great, but just a surprise that especially with flying citadels flying around.
They could have shown more of that at the end, because there was all that was going on in the skies. They just concentrated on the heroes of the Lance in this trilogy. There's a couple different books that go in if you want some Dragonlance versus dragons.
I'm guaranteed. Now I kind of figured we were going to get a dragon aerial battle against Tychus, her being a massive 5-headed dragon kind of thing. Missed opportunity. Any comments before we move on to the next chapter?
No, but to echo what you're saying, is it did feel like it was a missed opportunity, that there could have been a huge epic war and bringing all the all the towns, all the good in the world to fight against the evil. But they went the route of just going with it. They really just honed in on the group so much to where you really couldn't see anything outside of it. And for better or for worse, I think if you keep going and read the next, just get more immersed with these characters, it's easy to overlook and be like, it's all right. It would have taken the story, I think, just in another direction. And for whatever reason, they chose to keep it more condensed to these heroes versus a full-fledged war. I don't know. I would like to see it though. Even like back in that was it earlier in this book where Flint and Tasselhoff were fighting up in the sky on a dragon back. Like it was just so short. And Lorana, it was so short-lived, but that was really the only aerial dragon fight that we saw in the whole trilogy.
Yeah. Well, before,
Yeah.
you're right. I was gonna throw in KTR on her dragon, but it wasn't against another dragon. But yeah, but small plane. I don't know. But I was surprised. But made it more simplistic and grounded. Especially for the reader to fall through. And I still like the chase and everything. It reminds me of like an end-game dungeon type of thing. Chapter 12: The Debt Repaid. Race says farewell to his brother, but Caramon pleads him not to leave him with the Draconians coming. Race, using lightning, kills the oncoming Draconians. Race stating he would only save them the once, debt repaid. Caramon asked to leave by orb, by which Race reminds his brother of his friends. Caramon stating Race would need him, to which Race casts spell after spell, killing all downstream. Basically kind of stating, I don't need you anymore. Black robe wizards appear at this moment to try and defeat Race, but all flee within seconds. And this is kind of, I described it this way, but it's not necessarily like that. Some he does fight and kill, some they kind of see him and they just bow down and they apologize and leave. Some kind of just appear and see him and just know the power and they just take off instantly. I kind of love this. I thought it was so dope, and it does explain that he wasn't the only Black Robe wizard there. No, but I thought, because it's really like 2 sentences in there with these Black wizards show up, to try and take out Race, because that's who Takaisis was screaming. He's betrayed me. It was Race,
You see more in the last quarter of the book here. You see more good in Race than any other story ever. You got him helping Tanis, and he's like, "All right, Caramon, this is the last time. We're done." And then he comes across Tasselhoff. He's like, "Okay, we're done. This is the last time." And he's like, "Okay, let's get us out of here. Okay, this is the last time."
He's like, "This is the way we need to go out, but this is the last time I'm going to show you the way out."
That's great.
I loved all this with Race because I can tell you as a new reader, this scared me with Race when we got here, because especially the way the way he presents it himself. He literally says he's the last guardian, which led me to believe, oh shit, he's gonna be like the end boss and shit. They're gonna have to fight Race. I couldn't even consider. I thought they were just gonna have Barum die over and over, and he was just gonna like mush towards Race eventually, like trying to. I didn't know how it was going to play out. So the fact that it went this way, I was kind of pleasantly and happily surprised, because I couldn't see how they were going to write their way out of that one.
Race, he was the last guardian, but he was guarding him from going through the gate.
Yeah.
He didn't want him to go. Race was all about, he took all that power from Kisses, but he didn't want her to come through the gate.
No. All right, so the ground shakes. Caramon, more injured than he knew, is helped by Race. Jump back to Tanis. Most of the under dragon lords are killed off. Tanis struggles through the crowd to reach Lorana. She says thank you for saving her, and she flees the hall. He follows. Back to Race and Caramon. Using their disguises, they make it through the jails. Race curses the group for not taking the dream as a warning. They make it down a hallway and find Tika and Tass, both slightly alive. Tass awakes and apologizes to Caramon, to which he tells Tass that Tika is alive. Caramon, learning Tass was poisoned, he begs Race to heal him. He will, but this was his last debt repaid to the group. Race performs a spell and gives Tas a piece of his life force. Tas lives. Caramon in disguise gets some Dracos to help them. Tas loses his pouches and says sorry to Flem. That's where that chapter lives. And I do have a question about this. How could they have used the dream as a warning? Race is extremely mad, and he even states this, that that was like kind of the purpose that they went through the dream. How could they have used this as a warning? I try to go back myself and think around, like, you know, and even with Tas, like, even with him knowing that he was going through the dream, I don't think he could have prevented it, kind of thing. He still, like, it still was like set in stone, kind of thing. Race makes it seem like they could have gone around it, and the only thing I could have surmised is if they would have taken that dead end, you know, if they would have gone, you know, just away from Naraka and avoided the whole situation, kind of thing. But their presence saves the day, kind of thing. You know, I mean, that literally fixes the world, brings balance, as to say, you know, kind of thing.
Yours.
I don't know. It just leads me to some weird thoughts with Race and how he believed this would have turned out. You know, if they wouldn't have, you know, if they would have proceeded with the warnings, kind of thing, and just detoured this all together. All right.
Raceland's always the skeptic, I think. So I don't know. He's never really going to paint anybody and their deeds in a good light. It's always going to be weakness. They could have done it better, you know.
I could go with that. I could see that. Yeah, because that has been true throughout the, you know, trilogy of the skepticism. So I could go with that. Chapter 13, Kitiara. Tanis, still following Lorana, is a little lost, traveling through passageways, finding fresh air. He follows this. Tanis thinks about the dragons. Now Takaisis has gone, and basically it's a couple things he thinks about, like, are the dragons going to disappear? Who's going to control the dragons now that Takaisis is gone? But he's thinking about the dragons. Eventually finding Lorana now dressed in draconian armor. That's kind of how she was avoiding Tanis and the get-go, is because she had switched her armor. Clever girl she was. Tanis tries talking with Lorana and at first wants to mad dash away. Mid-explanation, they're interrupted by Kitiara. Kitiara offers Tanis a place at her side, to which Tanis refuses. Lord Soth appears down the hallway and is through the power of prayer, Tanis states he is willing to die but would pray to Paladin to save Lorana's soul. Kitiara gives them directions out and bids Tanis goodbye. Lord Soth is flying towards them, but Tanis and Lorana find the exit and flee. Soth is stopped by Kitiara. Soth wants to pursue, but Kitiara explains Lorana's soul is now protected by the gods, and they had more important things to do. Kitiara believes she had poisoned their love, obtaining her goal. Lord Soth gives her the crown of power and is sent to Dargard Keep. They say some creepy farewells. The kid admires the crown. We jump back to Tanis and Lorana trying to find their way out. They witness the temple shift and change, make to Tas. Wait. I don't know what I wrote there. Make to Tas's pouches. Tas believes this to be a sign. Oh, that Tanis and Lorana make it to Tas's pouches in that hallway. Tanis believes this to be a sign that Tas died. Outside, they can see Draconians killing each other. Tanis thanks Paladin and finds the miniature gold dragon. And that's where that chapter leaves off. So I got a question for you. Why would Soth ever work for Kitiara again or believe her? And I want to say the answer is kind of something we might have already discussed. But maybe if you had other thoughts, because this is the moment when Soth literally finds out that, yeah. I want to say it's that he just simply wants KTR. He doesn't care about the lies and the deceit, because, I mean, you're talking about like he's about to get Tanis and Lorana, and Kit's like, hold on, stop, hold on. But wait, KTR, my prize is right there. Why can't I have it? Oh, her soul's protected by the gods. And he's just like, okay, what's next? There's no anger, there's no fight, there's no like, oh, I'm surprised you lied to me. Um,
I can't have hers. I'll take yours.
yeah. And that's why I put that in the creepy farewells, because this is that moment where he kind of, he kind of does this whole like, if you come join me,
Well, I got
Yeah,
one
he
from
made
Tracy.
it too creepy there at the end.
He does creepy.
He could have been a lot smoother.
So Tracy says this about it. Soth's touch and his words bring us back to one of the pillars of the Dragonlance story. Evil turns on itself. For all purposes, the dragon armies have self-destructed despite this transient victory for Kidiar.
Yeah. And we see that throughout all this. I mean, the evil turning it on itself kind of thing.
And that's like a personal, emotional victory. Yes. It's like no real victory when it comes to the war.
No, but still satisfying.
I was gonna say one of the things that he tells her was like, farewell, Kidiara. He then paused. How does it feel, my dear, to know that you have brought pleasure to the damned? You have made my dreary realm of death interesting. Would I have known you as a living man?
And I want to say that chalks back into that whole her spending the night at Dargar Keep. That's relation to like his want for KTR is like he keeps, she keeps amazing him in these magical evil ways kind of thing. Like, oh, you're bringing some excitement into this undead soul kind of thing.
Soth had this thing about, he liked elves, and it reminded him of his old, but there was something about Kidiara that he was like, hey, you know what?
Well, that's another thing that leads me to believe that he just wants KTR, because KTR makes that, that, hey, there's other elven maidens in the world, and he's all like,
Yeah.
He kind of does the whole like, maybe that's not what I want,
Yeah.
I want to say I do this. It kind of came as a surprise, but not a surprise, meeting KTR in the shadows and her eventually helping Tanis, but her whole like, poisoned their love forevermore, which I can totally get behind. It is a thing, especially like, I mean, when there's any kind of jealousy involved kind of thing, and there is a past between some said lovers.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, chapter 14, the end for good or for evil. Now with Race and Caramon. Caramon asks where to go, and Race points to a ridge with a bright light and tells them that somebody waits for them. To which Tass answers, Fizban? Race kills the Draconians who help them. Using the orb, he summons Sign Bloodbane, which Race mounts, and Caramon tries to go with Race. Race states their time connected was over and they were to live separate lives. He flies away. Bye-bye. Fizban, now with Tanis and Lorana, are greeted by Caramon, Tika, and Tass. There are brief hellos. Fizban calls Tass over, asking him his name, revealed to be Paladin, to which Tass mourns his friend. Paladin describes Flint under a tree, whittling next to Reorx's forge, waiting for Tass, but waiting for new stories. Fizban, to be his name among the kinderfolk. Caramon asks Fizban for answers about Race, and he only mentions he needs to let Race go. Tanis asks if good won, but Fizban states balance has returned. Explain too much of one side is a bad thing. Says the catalyst was needed to prepare the world for this current situation. Tanis asks if he was in the end, and he answers yes, and that even though there was some control, he only set the stage. He hops on Pyrite and leaves. Tanis removes his armor and Caramon keeps his. Tanis asks what the group will do. Caramon and Tika to return to Solace. Tass to Kinderhome. Tanis has a conversation about commitment, pity, and love, but ultimately state that their true love for another. They stay on the ridge awaiting dawn, not talking. And that was related to Tanis and Tanis has a conversation, with Lorana about commitment. I forgot to write it.
Such a great conversation too. He played it perfectly, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of like all those things rolled up into one. I know it's a brief overview of that, but it is about commitment, pity, and love. Ultimately, it kind of touch bases on those things. But Lorana ultimately kind of, not necessarily forgiving him, but moving forward with their love kind of thing. They stay on the ridge awaiting dawn, not talking. Near dawn, they witness pieces of the broken temple. They shoot into the sky, once again becoming constellations, Paladin, Takaisis, and Gillian all in the sky. And there's a lot I breezed over, like that conversation between Tanis and Lorana is a lot deeper conversation. One of the conversations that I love, it's honestly one of the greatest like farewells in a book I've found. Them waiting on that ridge and there's no conversation because they don't want to rush the time that they have before they have to say goodbye. I think is like it's wonderfully written, like as far as like an adventure quest kind of thing going, and we're talking about companions are about to split up and go and semi-permanent directions kind of thing. I thought that was great.
And the whole Flint where he is and everything, how they explain that, perfect.
I love that. And again, my version was loosely, because the book goes more into detail, and I like that. Like, people coming to sit next to Flint, so he was never alone. But Flint not wanting that company, him specifically waiting for tasks, but not wanting current tasks. He wants tasks that's lived longer with new stories, kind of thing. No, I generally love, like, you talk about Flint's death compared to Sturm. I mean, it's like two totally different situations, and the way they treated Fizban here was main character death. Sturm was kind of side character death, kind of thing. I'm not saying that they didn't do Sturm's death well. No, I mean, we didn't even get a burial for Sturm, and yes, related to the story, but.
Well, Sturm was also, he was a knight before anything. So he got his perfect burial and all that. Flint was more part of the group. He was the oldest. He was the wisest, as far as just experience in the group. He was also Tanis's best friend. Sturm, he was his friend and everything, but not near as close as Flint.
Yeah. And I think
that's why I think it hit harder, because it hit the characters harder, I think.
It did, and I think that's my favorite part of these deaths is the cast reaction, the group's reaction to their deaths, kind of thing, and that's where it gets me with Flint. Like when Flint died, I mean, we already knew it was coming, kind of thing, and then like being told that he was just going to die of old age, that really helps the reader, kind of thing. It's not like he dies in a horrible situation, he's killed by betrayal, no, he died of like natural causes. So I mean, that kind of like eases it down. But no, it's how the rest of the group reacts to his death, and being such a great friend, and like who Tass's character was, like that whole buildup of who he is, what he represents, and then the friendship that they had, and then it was the whole comedy beat. It's like watching Tommy Boy, and before the end of the movie, Chris Farley died, and David Spade standing there by himself. It's just excellent writing, and this excellent character build above these three books with these companions, it was fantastic. There's a couple little chapters right after that. Hey, Stephanie. The Homecoming. Race returns to the Library of Palantis, briefly witnessed by Anston, then continues to the power of Palantis. He breaks the curse, enters the main gate, stating he is home. Again, that is a brief like overview of that. There's a lot more that goes into that, and it's actually really epic. I really, I thought it was really dope. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, it's not just one curse he breaks. It's kind of like several that kind of like pop up trying to stop him, and he's just like,
I
No, I
totally
love the-
forgot that was even part of this trilogy. I was like, oh damn, they put that on the end of this. I totally forgot about that.
Has a good ending.
Mm-hmm.
The very last chapter, and it's not even really a chapter, is Raceland's farewell, and it's a poem filled with contextual buzzwords, but basically Ray's asking Caramon what he's going to do now. It's for me, it's the weirdest thing. I wish I would have cut the book off before then, because not only does it not really fit in context to where we leave the book off, but like I could get if we got this like way before. If Ray's asking these questions and like, but we already had the conversation with Caramon and him like, Ray's basically telling Caramon, I don't care. You need to go live your own life. You're gonna live, which is a good thing, but you gotta go, bro. Like, I got my own things to do. And then we get this where like the whole poem is kind of like, Caramon, you had this nurturing nature and now who are you gonna nurture? And
Well, you're gonna like this. This was written. That was written by Michael Williams. I think he did a few of the poems within the story. He says about that. I tried to sound Shakespearean here, but ended up more like Browning, Mr. not Mrs. That could have been exploited nicely. With Robert Browning's monologues, people are always trying to hide something, always betrayed by their words. Problem is, Raceland's too honest here for a Browning hero, and the result is a poem that, in my opinion, has some good early flashes, but is kind of strained and flat in conclusion. So
it's really, and I love Browning's poems. Like that's the basis of my favorite series, the Gunslinger series. Robert, okay, I'm with them. It just doesn't work in the context where they put it in the book. If they would have gave it to us like before they had that conversation, I could get that.
Yeah.
Like if they would have if this would have been on a boat and Raceland was by himself, with the orb, and he was writing this out because he knew he was going to leave Caramon. That would have made sense. And I can even take this out of context and put it there, and it makes sense. But
That's what I imagine. I imagine this is what he wrote him before their interaction. And this is kind of like a memento that Caramon has of his brother.
I want to say that's how I'm going to look at it, because at the end of the book, it just doesn't fit. But there it does. And that we do know he was kind of just sitting there at the orb, like at the desk for a while, like doing stuff. So, I mean, who's to say he didn't write a note to Caramon? And it kind of it brings more context to their brotherly relationship versus just like, hey, you need to go live your own life. Bye,
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, do you mind if I read a quarter? Do you mind if I read a quarter page of Raceland's homecoming?
Yeah.
Know this, said Raceland calmly, looking up at the tower, pitching his voice so that it could be heard by those within. I am the master of past and present. My coming was foretold. For me, the gates will open. The skeletal hand shrank back and, with a slow sweeping motion of invitation, parted the darkness. The gates swung open upon silent hinges. Raceland passed through them without a glance at the hand or the pale visage that was lowered in reverence. As he entered, all the black and shapeless, dark and shadowy things dwelling within the tower bowed in homage.
Mm-hmm.
Then Raceland stopped and looked around him. I am home, he said. Peace stole over Palanthas. Sleep soothed away fear. A dream, the people murmured. Turning over in their beds, they drifted back into slumber, blessed by the darkness, which brings rest before the dawn. Good stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was epic. And during that whole scene, it's like 3 different spells that he overcomes, because like these skeleton hands that come up and try and deter him. It's like whatever the bot, there's some kind of like fear pressing from the body, and then there's some kind of like altering, because of they just mention it as a darkness, but as far as I could tell, it's like 3 different spells that are right there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the balance being restored. That place being left unchecked, caused all that evil. But with Raceland there, somebody there to keep it in check, even though he's evil, he still creates peace and calm.
It just sets the stage as him being cemented into future stories as a main character.
Yeah, it does.
The next trilogy, the greatest trilogy of all.
Because you're kind of like, what happened?
The legends, the legends.
Epic, but he didn't really have a curve. Like Tannis had a conclusion. I don't know. There's still some strings left untied.
There are, but not I want to say for me, like most everything was tied, and you could tell it leads to the next, next. My only thing is like questions are, the main characters with Tanis, and I know Tanis's journey continues, but the way it's written right here is like this was kind of written almost like their ending, like
Mhm.
Raced feels like his journey continues. KTR and Soth feels like their journey continues.
I think this actually shows Caramon's journey continuing because
Yep.
it preambles the new generation and his kid.
Yeah.
Kind of with about talking about him being a loving brother and nurturing and all that stuff in that poem. So that kind of alludes to Caramon's future journey.
Really, only Tanis's arc seemed, and Lorana's came to a conclusion. Maybe Tasselhoff. You can argue that Caramon and Tika will live happily ever after, but otherwise, a lot of it, most of it seemed open ended.
All of it does in a way, but all of it does feel ended. I guess it depends on, and they could have stopped it, but of course we know that, they branch out and continue in some form. But I mean, that's like Caramon and Tika from the reader's perspective. I could just envision them doing the happily ever after. They go back to Solace. They start to rebuild, and that's just their life, Like, I mean, I could, and like Tass would be the hardest one to write off where this is the end of it kind of thing, because the whole like Flint wants more stories and Fizban told him this. So, with Tanis and Lorana, that to me, I feel like they could go back to,
It makes you wonder what stories they already had brainstormed for future
at this
books,
moment,
or what they had. I don't know what the contract situations are with book writing, especially around this time. But
Well, when I was reading this annotated trilogy, I was reading the back, and this was written 15 years after. And during this time, Margaret Weis was writing the War of Souls trilogy, which was going to be one of the last trilogies that they made. So that would only lead me to assume that, I mean, they had their hands full after they wrote these first three, because then we talked about this from day one, that there was the Legends. Then they did a couple prequels, the Soul Forge, Brothers in Arms. That's about the twins again. And then they went into Dragon. Then they did kind of a fast forward with Second Generation, with the Heroes' Children and Dragons of Summer Flame, which is again more of the Heroes' Children. And then there was like another epic battle with I won't go far into that. I don't remember much, and I won't spoil what I do know. And then they came out with the War of Souls trilogy, and then that was a 3-parter, which was pretty epic in my opinion.
War of Souls is freaking thick books.
And they were thick.
Yeah.
There's some thick boys.
Yeah. So, but regardless, before the War of Souls, that was like probably 6 or 7 books, or maybe 7 or 8 books right in there that that they were filling their time with. So, I don't know. Yeah, they didn't pump the brakes for a while.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, and going off of what you just said, but even the way it's written, to me, it feels like they had plans for, if not all of it, like most of it, kind of thing, like where it was going to go from this point, especially with Raceland, especially with like Kitiara, because I do know she plays a bigger part as well. I want to say, like, from I can usually tell where their direction's going to go with this. I can't, off the information they gave us, I can't really determine where they're going. Like sitting here thinking about Raceland, I have no idea, like what he plans to do, what his next step. I have no clue. But it's really based off, like, I mean, I can imagine things that he would, but like, yeah, I mean, drawing at straws kind of thing. No, but overall, I love this series. It was great, and to Angie's question before, it's easy to get into. It's not a lot of mass understanding into the realm or lore. and everything that you needed is kind of within the pages of the books as you go along, like learning about the catalyst, and because it does play. That I did not think as we were going to go through. I thought that was just a past event, that happened in the past, and I didn't know it was going to play such a huge thing going forward, which it did, with this tar
the next trilogy, big time.
and Dragonlance
So they're
trilogy.
still writing. They're still writing them. They
Mm.
got a new trilogy coming out next year. That's just
Something to look forward to. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm far away from that, so I got time. You know what I'm saying? I got a lot to read. But guys, this was a fun journey. I do want to mention that we have kind of determined where the route of our next book is going to be, and it's going to be the R.A. Salvatore, the Jurist trilogy. The first book is Homeland. That will be a month from this Saturday. I want to say we'll predominantly feature the same cast, but I do know Jesse might be hopping off, so we might have a new person on the panel, but same context. But we will be moving to the Forgotten Realms side for at least 3 books, and then after we get done with that, we'll determine where we move from there.
Yeah, I think Paul wants to join us.
Mhm. And I do know Beckermin eventually wants to get to some Dark Sun, which I do too. But guys, I really want to say thank you, Jesse. I really want to say thank you for all the extra background notes that you detailed from.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And it answers a lot of the questions that I had just from a reader standpoint kind of thing. But I want to thank all y'all. This was fun and amazing. I look forward to each and every episode, and I look forward to the next one that's coming up. But guys, we have hit our 2-hour mark. We finished this dang trilogy. It was epic. I loved it. Thank you, Trev, for recommending this. It was fantastic and fun, and it was a great breakdown too.
You always do great with these. All the questions, all just the breakdown and everything, and then Jesse, awesome job.
Yeah.
Both of you guys.
And I got to talk. I got to talk a little bit about Soft, so I was happy.
Hell yeah. Great panel, great discussions, and get well soon, Becker.
Yeah.
Get well soon, buddy.
Better get well soon. All right, guys, but I'm gonna go ahead and end this. Thanks everybody for stopping by. Leave comments, hit that like button, all that good stuff, and we'll see you in about a month. Bye.
Later.
See you.